There are 1,295 miles between Parkersburg, West Virginia, and Austin, Texas, and our boy Kyle Bratke is going to get to drive every single one of those bad boys between now and on Monday of next week. So today, it's just me, solo mission, bootleg, right now. No truth to the rumor that Kyle is considering a career as a long-haul truck driver, but what I will say is that he was remarkably prepared to respond to a pair of flat back tires outside of M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore on Tuesday. Long story short, we spent the entire day there for CAA Media Days. We walk outside, and Bratke's beautiful silver Ford Explorer, not on the ground, but pretty close. I mean, it was dangerous territory. And look, frankly, not his fault. Granted, the low tire signal was on when he picked me up from the airport, and it was pointed out to him that it was on, but he was not concerned, you could say. He said, basically prove it. So the car proved it, that he actually did need to inflate his tires. That being said, not totally his fault. Baltimore, not crushing it in the whole city street game. Not a great look. Lots of potholes, lots of manhole covers, a lot of rogue city buses that are forcing you to do awkward stuff in your vehicle. And Bratke being the navigator, being the driver, he had to do what he had to do. But we got there, we got to media day. When we walk out, the tire situation has become a bit more dire. But Bratke opens the back door. He gets out of a tire inflator situation. Clearly, I don't have one. Just airs up both tires right there in the parking lot. The commissioner of the CAA, Joey D, what's up, comes over to check on us, and we're like, Joe, we're good. We're good. Because why? Because Kyle was prepared. So he may not be driving a truck anytime soon, but just know that if you're going to take a road trip, he is an excellent person to have with you. And we'll do exactly that in 10 to 11 days, something like that. We'll head out right back out where we came from, actually. Do a little CAA training camp road trip, and I'll have him there. I'm not sure if we'll have the tire pump, but I'm sure he'll have something to alleviate some sort of crisis situation along the way. Anyway, today's going to be a little bit different. Just a man and his laptop, all alone. But I was a little worried that if we went 2 weeks without doing any kind of a show, that Mina Kimes may come for our name again. I'm just kidding. Mina has a perfect name for her podcast. Actually, I think you can make a pretty strong case that we could rename this podcast the Hank and Griffey Show and be better for it, but we're not going to do that. We're going to stick with the one that we've got. 2 weeks ago, I went to the Big 12 Media Days situation down there in Dallas, Texas at Jerry World, the palace that is AT&T Stadium. And what resulted was the first thing that I want to hit on today as I kind of, knock out a couple of topics and then send you on your way. I was in a conversation with Jalen Reagor from TCU, and I didn't intend for the topics to do what they did. I didn't expect the conversation to go where it went, but I'm glad it happened because, frankly, it's something that we should all be talking about. So, long story short, Jalen and I were talking about mental health, a topic that he brought up, and, well, just take a listen. Here's where it went.
Media fans and everybody, they just it's certain things that we had built up that we can't say because of our platform, but it's just like most people don't understand that we're people outside of us being football players. So, and most people always say, okay, we do understand, we do, but most people just say that. They don't really understand because they're so caught up in what we do on the field. Like, they don't understand that, okay, we have life problems, we have stuff that bothers us, just like the normal person that just doesn't play sports. So it's just like, why would you not think about somebody's mental health? You know what I'm saying? Because people will ask you to speak about it, and then be ready, and then they'll bash you the same thing. Like, the same person that interviews you that ask you the question will bash you about what you said, even though it's positive. So it's just like like I said, people say that they understand, but they really don't, because they're not in those shoes. They don't know what it's like to lose a game and then go check your Instagram DMs or Twitter DMs. Nobody knows what that's like. So it's like people ask, they just assume that it's just so, mellow and so flatline, but it's not.
Okay, so the next day I brought up the same topic while I was talking to West Virginia's TJ Simmons. You may remember TJ Simmons transferred from Alabama to West Virginia. And then last year, during what was an absolute barn burner in Morgantown between the Mountaineers and Oklahoma, West Virginia had a long touchdown run negated after TJ was flagged for blocking Trey Brown of Oklahoma approximately 4 yards deep into the stands. It was a penalty, and it should have been called. And I can tell you that without argument because Kyle's not here. But the key point of it all is that it was an effort play. It wasn't, TJ didn't, it wasn't a celebration penalty. It wasn't a look at me thing. It wasn't, he didn't jump off sides for the 5th time in the game. It wasn't his 3rd holding penalty because he could not block the guy in front of him. But, I'll get to all that. But all it was TJ putting forth maximum effort and blocking the absolute hell out of his guy. And on the play, West Virginia scored a touchdown in large part because TJ blocked the hell out of his guy. Now, he blocked him for too long, so the thing came back. Oklahoma ends up winning by 3. There's your context. Now, listen to what TJ had to say on the same topic when I kind of brought up social media.
I received a lot of scrutiny last year after the Oklahoma game because of the play I made and the penalty that we got. And they say a lot of people blame the game on me. A lot of people say I was the reason that we lost. And I just take it like with a grain of salt. Just I know the type of player I am, and I know what I was taught growing up. I was taught to do what I got to do, no matter what, just for the win of the team. And if my teammates and my coaches and my family are still supporting me after a loss or after I make a mistake or make a bad play, then it doesn't really matter what everybody on Twitter says.
Okay, so here's a little background on me. I studied educational leadership in graduate school with a focus on sports admin, and that's really just a fancy way of saying that I was taught how to lead the leaders of our student athletes. In the process of that, the area that I leaned into the most, I would say, was sports psychology. And as athletes, once we reach college, we've been identifying ourselves primarily based on our sport and the position we play within our sport for at least a decade. Hi, I'm Kolby, I play linebacker. That's, or point guard, I'm the point guard, I'm the catcher, whatever the case may be. So when that gets taken away from us, be it because of an injury or because we just run out of an opportunity relative to our ability level, it's traumatic. Because, again, everything that you thought you were, everything you have been up to that point, now you're not that. So now it's, who am I? Who are you? I'm Kolby, and I don't know what to tell you after that. But it can also be traumatic to be told that you're not good at that thing that you identify yourself as being. And that can happen while you're still playing. You don't have to be done playing to be told you're not any good at it. But it's worse still if the indictment of you as a player is followed up with a personal attack. Not only are you a shitty player, but you're so bad that I do not value you as an individual anymore. That's right. The latter is what Jalen was talking about. The latter is what TJ had to deal with after that loss. And quite frankly, there's just no excuse for it. I want you to understand, because we joke about it being Twitter egg. It's not always Twitter eggs, man. There's media members that come after players with blue check marks. Okay, there are plenty of regular, apparently regular dudes on Twitter, or women, equal opportunity here to insult people, that go after athletes on Twitter for what? Just know that you will never in your life be lamer than the moment that you start attacking an athlete on Twitter. For what? For dropping a pass, for missing a block, in TJ's case, for making a block for a little too long. You're never going to be worse than that. That is as bad as you're ever. That's the worst look. It is the worst look. While you sit there on your couch, 20 pounds overweight, primed to run like a 6-flat 40, but you would never actually make it 40 because you popped your hamstring before you ever got 40 yards downfield. You, that guy, on Twitter, on your phone, Coors Light in your left hand, phone in your right hand, Twitter fingers telling TJ Simmons that he, whatever awful thing you want to say to him. I'm not even going to try to dream up the type of responses that he was probably getting for that play. Same thing with Jalen Reagor. Oh, well, we expected more out of TCU. You guys ranked in the top 25, ranked in the top 10, whatever it was. And now you've lost more than you've won. You don't have any value to me anymore. You're not important to me anymore. You're not important as an individual. Jalen Reagor, wide receiver. You're not good enough at that to be valuable as an individual. That's what we tell these guys on Twitter all the time. You would be floored by the type of mentions that a guy gets when he makes a bad play, when he misses a play, when his team loses, when he may be the reason that his team loses, or is at least perceived to be. And by the way, there are 53 guys on an NFL roster, 100 and some odd guys on a college roster, and there are 22 guys on a field at one time. And keep going. There are this many minutes in a game. There are this many yards on a field. There are this many plays running the game. You can't look at one play and say that's the reason that team lost. You can't do it. There's 65 other reasons why that team lost. That just so happens to be the one that sticks in your mind. And even if it was the one reason that they lost, it's inconsequential. It really is. In the grand scheme of things, it should never draw you to hop on Twitter, jump in their mentions, and tell them that they suck as a player or that they suck as a person. It makes you pathetic. Pathetic. All right, so on a lighter note, again, we were in Baltimore earlier in the week. CAA Media Days. Fantastic. I can't say this enough, man. We, collectively as a company, myself at the forefront of it, at least as far as people can see, we are so happy to have a partner like the Colonial Athletic Association. I've said this before in multiple conversations with others. I probably have said it at this desk. I'll say it again. The CAA is a league that it was no accident that we ended up with this league. And all credit goes to people like Lindsey Ross and Mark Floriani for the fact that we closed that deal. But just know, on a personal level, I loved this league so much that 18 months ago, I singled them out and said, please go get this league. It's the best league in the FCS, the highest level of competition. We published an article, actually, that got a lot of people from the Missouri Valley Conference mad, but I'm sorry, North Dakota State winning every year does not necessarily mean that your league is good. It just means that you have one really, really good team. The Colonial has a half a dozen really, really good teams or more. So I say that to say that we're very excited to be a part of this. We're very happy about this partnership, thrilled to get into the season, and the whole thing kicked off in Baltimore on Media Days. When everybody else kicks off their season same way, Media Day, that's when officially college football begins, because now it's talking season, and it means we're only a month away from playing season. So Bratke and I, we were there. I talked to 7 different players off to the side one-on-one, met countless others, coaches, people from the league, had a wonderful time. Wonderful time. They couldn't have been, kinder people. They really rolled out the red carpet for us. So really pumped about it. The one piece of advice I would give you for my trip to Baltimore, if you're thinking about it and you just want to do it because you've never done it before, that was me, don't get the blue crab, the big crab, and they give you the hammer, and then you have to break the crab with the hammer. It's just a couple of things. First of all, if you don't like to get food on your hands, and I don't, I actually hate that more than anything. Bad news, you're going to have food all over your hands. Second of all, it's a bit risky, because when you break the crab, the crab has a shell for a reason. It's supposed to protect the crab from attackers. Now, the crab has since passed on, but the shell remains. So when you break the shell, pretty good odds that you're going to have a finger injury along the way. Most importantly, once you're able to successfully get through the crab shell and get to the inside of the crab, and once you pull back the lungs and get through the intestines and all that really lovely stuff that you get to take a look at right before you try to eat, you got about, a quarter size worth of actual crab meat. So it's a whole lot of work, very little reward. And if you just get the lump crab or crab cake, all the work is done for you. So I went down that path. I can now say that I've tried blue crab. I've tried to break the crab with the hammer. I have been relatively successful in doing that, but it was not worth the work that it took to get to the meat. So my major takeaway from Baltimore, Maryland is crab, good. Crab that you have to actually break into, very bad. All right, so football. CAA Media Day, like I said, we had 7 different guys come into our room, sit down with us. Kyle and I, conducted some interviews. Really, across the board, I could not have been more impressed. I mean, all 7 guys really brought something to the table. Every one of them, it felt like, leaned into one of the topics. One of the questions I asked really got them going, and you could see the light come on, and you could see them really want to, get into it and invest themselves in the response a little bit. And all of those interviews are available at FloFootball.com right now. You don't even have to look that hard for them. Just go to the CAA Media Day page. It's on the right of the home screen. Click it. It'll take you to all the content that we did throughout our time there. So there's player interviews, there's coach interviews, also segments from the CAA show, and a couple of written pieces as well. So check that out. But right now, there are 2 in particular that I want to bring up. And the first was with Maine cornerback Manny Patterson. Now, he's a bad dude. I mean, if he's not the best cornerback in the league, he's one of the 2 best cornerbacks in the league. And he may well be the best. He may be number 1. And not only is he the best cornerback in the CAA, if that's true, that also, damn near by default, makes him the most talented defensive back in the FCS. And, oh, by the way, he's a guy that's going to play on Sundays. It's not just an FCS thing. It's a college football thing. He's that good. He's going to be a guy playing on Sundays. Loved our conversation with him. He brought energy. He was honest. It was great. But there was one thing in particular that he did, or one place that he went during that interview, that I want to share right now, because I've never heard a player give this much detail into studying other players at the same position at the next level. I mean, you always ask, hey, who's a guy that you emulate? Who's somebody that you want to model your game after? Who do you watch? Most everybody will give you a pretty generic description of what that is. Well, I watch a lot of guys. I try to implement the best parts of everybody's game into my game, whatever. Manny went in. He named names. He named techniques in particular that he is watching for. And I want you to listen to that right now.
What guys in the NFL do you look up to, or are you watching film of and breaking down, trying to take something away from their game?
Right. I love studying Patrick Peterson, his patience at the line. Tavon Young for the Ravens. I work out with him when I'm back home training. His technique and everything, how he goes about his workouts, just makes me realize, this is an NFL type lift, and that's how I gotta attack everything I go at. Who else I looked at in the league? Jalen Ramsey, great cornerback. It's a lot, it's a lot of people in the league that I really look at. Xavier Rose, another great cornerback. I just like different. I like DBs that use different technique. With Xavier Rose, it's more his long arms. He's going to get you at the line. Patrick Peterson, his patience at the line. And one thing I try to learn from everybody in the NFL level, especially at DB, is getting your hands on the receiver early. Because you only had that 5-yard cushion to work with. So that's one thing, just watching film and watching how they do it, I've been trying to implement into my game now early, so I can start doing that now. And in college, just getting my hands on it as much as possible during that first 5 yards.
Pretty good, right? So like I said, Manny gave a phenomenal answer to that question. I could not have hoped for better. It was one of my favorite parts of the entire day. But he wasn't an outlier. I mean, every guy we talked to had some moment like that. And again, all of those are available on the site right now. There is one other player that we talked to that there was a moment similar to that that I want to point out right now, and that was Elon quarterback Davis Cheek. So Davis, when he got to Elon as a freshman, was almost immediately the man. He was the CAA Offensive Freshman of the Year in 2017, led Elon to the playoffs, and this is a team that won 5 games in 12 years before he got there. I'm sorry, 12 games in 5 years. 5 and 12 would have been much worse. he gets there, they go to the playoffs, and he balls, freshman. Last year, they start off 4-1. They're rolling. They beat James Madison. Everything is turning up Elon. And then Davis, in the Delaware game, goes down with a torn ACL. And from that point forward, everything changes for the program. I mean, they still go to the playoffs, credit to them. But they had lost their leader at that point. They had lost their guy on offense. And despite a hell of a year by Jalen Thomas, who would eventually become the CAA Offensive Newcomer of the Year last year, it wasn't enough. They get into the playoffs, and that was it. And Davis Cheek had to watch the entire thing from the sideline. And so I want you to listen to what he had to say about that, and then I'll add a little commentary after the fact.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a huge disappointment, and more than anything, I think it's, not just for myself, but also all the guys that they put in so much time and effort. And I mean, the hardest part, honestly, was getting up and realizing that your role just diminished significantly on the team. And and because especially after surgery, stuff like that, try to be around as much as possible. But it's not the same as when people are saying, like, okay, you're having the direct effect on the game.
Right.
So I mean, it stinks, and we had a lot of guys get injured and things like that. But I feel like we had a lot of guys step up and do a lot of things that they probably weren't expecting to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, yeah, it was just kind of disappointing. But I think it's all for the better because you get to grow from it, and that's the big thing. That's kind of the big takeaway from surgery and going through it all, and you just really get to grow as a person.
For sure.
How tough is that to the last 6 games of the season, the playoffs, to have to watch and not really get to have a say in the game, as you were talking about? And then how do you bounce back from something like that or rebound?
It's really difficult to watch it. I mean, and not because it's not good football or whatever it is, but just knowing that that you could have done something, and that's what you kind of dwell in for a little bit. And you go through a lot of phases of I mean, it's almost phases of grief. Like, you kind of have to figure out, like, okay, what is my role now? What am I doing? Like, okay, and then you're trying to figure out what's your plan for surgery. What are you trying to get back? At the same time, you don't want to leave the team hanging, so you're trying to be around, stuff like that. But yeah, that's the big thing. And what was the second part of it?
But just how do you bounce back mentally and physically from an injury like that?
Yeah, I mean, the mental part is kind of the untold aspect of it. There's a big hump that you have to get over when you first get out. You don't realize I didn't realize how difficult surgery would be, and then even going through it all, and you kind of realize that you can't take anything for granted. You have to relearn how to walk. You have to relearn heel-toed, and you push off. My quad, like, as soon as you get surgery, especially ACL, your quad has a tendency just to kind of leave you. So had to re-wake that up. You had to just learn a bunch of different stuff. The physical part of everything, it comes with time. There's no substitute for time. And the thing that you'll hear from every single person that's been through ACL is that it's such a fluid timeline and date kind of thing. Everyone keeps asking, when are you going to be back? When are you going to be this? Like, I don't know. It just depends on what everybody says. How do you feel? And like I said, the kind of untold aspect of it, the psychological part. You have to be comfortable with sitting there and planting, guys coming at you. You have to sit there and think, okay, this guy's coming at me. I have to plant. Is it going to hold? And you kind of realize, as you go through training, stuff like that, yeah, it's going to hold up. It's going to be good. But you don't really know that until you step on the field, and that's when you really get the sense. So there's still a couple more humps to get over, but for the most part, it's just been a day in, day out process, and you just keep going until you can.
Pretty good, right? I mean, that is as much honesty and transparency as you're going to get from an athlete when you try to dive into that conversation. And credit to Bratke for bringing him back to it, because look, I probably would have let it end after the end of his initial response, and then Bratke brought it back and got the really good stuff out of it, I think. And look, it's probably cathartic for him to talk about it, frankly. Going back to my background in sports psychology in particular, when I said that there's an identity crisis of sorts when you are no longer that dude, that doesn't just apply to post-playing career. Okay, that applies to injury as well, because it's the same thing. You can't do it. It doesn't matter if it's temporary or not. And frankly, I mean, with a major injury like a torn ACL, I mean, I'm sure, like, I've never torn my ACL, but I'm sure that doubt does creep in. You know, am I ever going to be right? Am I ever going to be the same guy that I was before? And if you're not, then you're not ever all the way back to you, right? In your mind. That's at least what you think at the time. Davis getting into the details behind the recovery process and the comeback, not just from a physical aspect, but from a mental aspect, was phenomenal. Because that's what it is. It's as much mental as physical. They can repair your knee, but you have to believe in the knee. You have to believe that when you plant your foot, that knee is going to hold up. That all the rehab that you did, that it worked. That you're back. That you're good to go. And so I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't necessarily understand about an injury and a comeback, is just because a guy is all the way back physically does not mean he's all the way back mentally. In fact, he may never make it back all the way mentally. When you see a guy who's just not the same after an injury, it may not actually be the body, man. It may be the mind. So when Davis talks about the rehabilitation process being mental as well, I love that, because I think that's something we should all keep in mind. You know, when Davis Cheek, the quarterback, is no longer the quarterback, and he said it, I couldn't play the same role for the team anymore. That moment he realized that I'm not the same guy anymore. I'm a cheerleader now. We're going to the playoffs. I have nothing to do with it. There's another guy in my huddle. There's another guy behind my center. I'm not that dude. I'm Davis Cheek, the injured quarterback. That is the identity at that point moving forward. Credit to him, man, for pushing through. Credit to him for rehabbing not just his body but also his mind. I wish him nothing but the best of luck this year. He's a very talented kid, and I think he's going to have a huge year. Fortunately, you can watch it all on FloFootball.com. Shameless plug. But yeah, I think I'm expecting big things from Elon. I think that they handled the coaching change about as well as you possibly can, and keeping Trish on board, minimizing the change that the players were going to have to go through. I like everything I've heard out of there, both from players and just, observing what's being written about, what's being talked about the team, up in that part of the country. I think Elon's, got a real shot to compete for a league title and then definitely back in the playoffs, especially with Davis healthy. And again, Jalen Thomas doing what he did last year. We have a story up on the site right now from Kyle Kinsing where Jalen talks about his need to focus on things he's not good at, something he didn't do last year. Last year he came in as a freshman. He focused on the things he was good at. This year he's adding elements to his game by trying to improve in areas. That's growth. That's a step. So I expect Jalen Thomas, who was really good last year, to be even better this year, and that's very bad news for opposing defenses. All right. That's pretty much it for us today. In fact, that's not pretty much it. That literally is it. I know a little shorter today than we're used to. Didn't want to sit here and just rant all alone forever. What I would tell you is that Kyle will be back in action next week. We will be in studio next week. So normal setup like you're used to. However, we fly to Norfolk on August 4th. And then we begin our CAA training camp road trip that night and into the 5th. We will start at William & Mary, from William & Mary to Richmond, from Richmond to JMU. We have a weekend where we'll, probably, go to an Orioles game, something, relax. And then we will be at Towson on August 12th and 13th, another program that I have made it abundantly clear that I'm very excited to watch this year. And so the whole thing will wrap up on August 13th. We'll fly back on the 14th. All that to say, August the 8th, we will not be in studio. I'm not sure how we'll do the pod yet. Cross that bridge when we get there. Maybe an audio-only situation. We may finally try to do one of these on the road with video. I just know it didn't go that well when we tried to do it on the road at the opening, and I don't want to repeat that because that wasn't a great look for us. So, maybe we'll do one on the road on the 8th. Maybe we won't. But next week, we'll be back. We'll do another one. And, and then we get rolling, man. Once we do the training camp road trip, the season is upon us at that point. Got the pads and the helmets on. We're out there banging. We're out there getting ready for the year. When we come back on the 14th, we've got 2 weeks before the season starts. We'll have Delaware State, Delaware, kicking it off along with Jacksonville Richmond on August 29th. Also, don't forget about the Freedom Bowl, which is one of our favorite high school events. That's the same weekend. Also starts on the 29th, and that'll be 3 days worth of high school football as well. By now, when this comes out, you will know that we also, another thing that I know I keep saying we're excited, okay? New Mexico State has a new home, and it's FloFootball.com and the Flo Sports app. We'll have every New Mexico State home game on Flo. That includes San Diego State, that includes Fresno State, all right here. So we'll have that coming up as well. And there's one other program out there that I probably cannot break the news on yet, but deal signed. You'll find out about it soon enough. We're in store for easily our best year yet on Flo Football. And, regardless of, this year or whatever year, it's going to be a hell of a year. We got some great stuff on deck for you. Yeah. And at this point, I'm just kind of rambling on about upcoming games, so I'm going to shut up. We'll be back here next week. Kyle, I said that already. I'm Kolby. This was Bootleg. And I'm not even going to